So I was in town in Baltimore earlier, and I came outside, and it was a boot on my car. So I called them up, used a credit card. They gave me a code. I took the boot off the car, and then I took their boot back to them. So I want to send them a bill or an invoice for my services for bringing their boot back. So I just want to know, who should I send it to? Do I send it to the city of Baltimore, or do I send it to, and I'll let you take over from here, Carl, with your response.
So like I was saying earlier, the two things you got to find out. One is a lot of times governments subcontract out that kind of work. So like I said, in Baltimore, there might be a contracting company that actually goes out there and boots. You know, like I said, when I worked for Sprint and when I worked for Time Warner, we had to have white trucks. No matter what color our trucks were, we had to paint them white. And then they stuck the emblems of the companies on the side of our trucks. But we were not Time Warner employees. We were indemnified under bond or on our own. We had to carry $1 million policies. And if we did something wrong at somebody's house, they called up Time Warner or Sprint. They said, he's not one of our employees. I said, but wait a second. He pulled up in a Sprint truck. He was wearing a Sprint uniform, had a Sprint ID badge. It's like, yeah, but that's not one of our employees. So before you start going around thinking you're going to go after the mayor of Baltimore and all that other happy stuff, you better find out. You know what I'm saying? Just exactly who and what it is that actually trespassed on your property. You got to find out, like, the man or the woman who touched it. And so who gave you the authority or the right to touch my property? You see what I'm saying?
Right, I got you. All right, understood.
I have a question, though, for you, Al, is how'd you get the boot off?
They have a key code that you can punch in, but in order to get the code, you have to pay. You have to, call the 800 number and pay whatever they claim you owe them over the phone. And what makes it so bad is the ticket was $32, but the boot fee was $150. Ooh. And then they charge you $7.95 just for calling over the phone.
Oh my God! So you paid to get it off? To get the number?
Yeah, I paid to get it off. Yeah, because I got things to do. So it's not a problem because I know I can get the money back. But it's an inconvenience. So I just had to know who to go after. I've been listening to you for 3 years. I've been listening to Carl for at least 2. So I know I can get it back. I've gotten stuff back before, but matter of fact, I had a court case. They sent me my money back within 2 days. They sent me my money back in a check.
Oh.
So I know I can do it. It's just I just wasn't sure. Should I go after the city of Baltimore? But he made a valid point. They are subcontractors. I know exactly how that works. That's why the boot fee is so high, because they're independent contractors.
They're not supposed to be there to make money off of us,
Oh, all the cameras, the speed cameras, all those are independent contractors. So when they send you a ticket in the mail, the city only gets like 20% of that total fee, and they get the contractor gets 80%. Yep.
Amazing. Yeah.
Last year, the city made, I believe, a little over $2 million just on speed cameras.
Wow, that's incredible.
A lot of money.
Yeah. Oh yeah, but that's the thing. That like you say, the pen is mightier than the sword. You just got to know what to write. I got something I wanted to run past you right quickly, just see your thoughts on it. Just let it marinate. In the Book of Revelations in the Bible, there was an account where John was having a vision, and it was 7 seals, and John was crying because he felt there was nobody worthy of opening up or breaking these seals. So the angel said to John, don't worry, we got somebody to break the seal. We got somebody worthy to break the seal. Of course, that was Jesus Christ. But that same thing applies. Same thing applies today. If I put a seal on my letter and I write under that seal, like for instance, if I send the letter to let's say I send it to Mr. or Mrs. Baltimore City, I know that somebody's going to open it. But if I put my seal on the letter, on the envelope, and I write under that seal, let me explain something to you too. What it's going to be, you got the city of Baltimore. I'm sure you got something called Baltimore, and you got the government of the city of Baltimore. Whenever you're going after anything, you're going after the government of something. Of means for the benefit of something. Right.
The United. If you say right. So like when I'm going after Alabama, Alabama is basically just a title. You know, the state of Alabama is basically people that occupy a certain region on that planet Earth. That's the state. And then if I want to actually go to people who actually control the government, like the acting agents on behalf of the people, the servants of the people, I'm going after the government of the state of Alabama.
Right.
Well, okay, I'm not going after Alabama. You can't sue a state. You can't go after the city. You've got to go after the government.
Well, yeah, I wasn't saying I was suing them. I was just using that as an example.
But I'm just telling people, a lot of people, but I'm saying a lot of people ask that question of me. And that's what I try to tell them. You don't go after the United States. You don't go after you don't go after the state of Maryland. You go after the government of the state. And then you go after the CEO. You go after the magistrate. The chief magistrate of every state is the governor, and he's a man. And like I said, he controls his agents. Well, so obviously you can go after the agent, and you're going to go after the man who controls all the agents.
Right. Well, here's my question. Here's my question. In the past, you used an example like Pepsi Cola. It's not my place to say that individual's mother didn't name them Pepsi and his last name ain't Cola. So I'm writing a letter to Pepsi Cola, and I want Pepsi Cola to open it. And I put a seal on that letter, and I write on that letter, this letter is to the addressee only. And if you are not the addressee, but you break this seal, you're subject to the contents within. Right. So once they break that seal, they've now accepted my terms. You agree?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And a lot of people get in trouble with that. A lot of people get their cars repoed because, like I said, when you have to have an agreement or a contract, both parties have got to be, enjoined it. They have to, it's kind of like it's like I said, if you look in the Constitution, it's called intercourse. You can't just sneak up on somebody in intercourse with them and say that was consent.
Even if I write it on the outside of the letter?
Okay, you write somebody a letter saying I'm going to intercourse, you sneak up behind and you do it. Okay? What do you think that they're going to call that?
Well, no, I'm not sneaking up on them because they don't have to open it.
She broke the seal. She read it and then she didn't tell you no, so that means go ahead, green light to go.
Well, they could send it back. They could send the letter back. They don't have to open it.
Okay, but like I said, you said somebody broke the seal, right? You said somebody read it. Somebody's now they're.
Well, I'm assuming that. Like, say for instance, if I send it to what they call it when you send money back, not payroll, accounts payable, accounts receivable. So let's say I send something to accounts receivable and I address it to Pepsi Cola. And I put my seal on it, and then I put underneath my seal, this letter is for Mr. or Mrs. Pepsi Cola only. Anyone who opens this letter, other than Mr. or Mrs. Pepsi Cola, agrees to the terms within.
Well, what I'm saying, plenty of people that either through the creditors and commerce people or the Winston Shroud crowd, somebody was saying, put $1.50 on there, say down in the memo, then for say account paid in full. And these people, run them, like the Department of Treasury, they just run these checks through scanning machines. They don't actually, you're not actually delivering it to a person, and the person's not actually, you're not getting a signature and saying that somebody actually accepted this. Somebody has to accept the proposal. I mean, just because you make a woman a proposal, in a dance club, and you say, hey, I want to intercourse with you. She's like, what? Okay, whatever. And then you got to, like I said, you got to give.
Isn't the words on the outside of the document contract? And if they,
like I said, there's certain elements of a contract or an agreement. There must be consent between the parties. You see, there must be full disclosure. You see what I'm saying? It must be in good faith. No trickery, no deception. You see what I'm saying? It's like, I got you. Dude, it's like you're saying I got him with a trick move. That's not cricket. You know what I'm saying? It's not kosher. And the jury, when they take them to court, if they try to do that to me, try to do that to you, you just bring them right to a court and say, hey, man, they tricked me, man. They gave me something with a seal on it. I honestly didn't know what the seal nonsense is all about because it's not basically common law that everybody knows. 99% of the people you walk out on the street and say something sealed at me. They're like, I ain't got a clue. Right. This is common law. This is common law land.
Yeah.
So you can't
if they sent it to me, I would send it back.
But yeah, it's like I found a loophole. I found a trick, so I'm really going to mess a lot of people up. So I'm going to nail them with this loophole. See, when this lady who's bringing me out to Missouri, she's like, if you could get the IRS to leave me alone by May, I'll give you a nice chunk of change for, help me. So she's like, hey, I got a letter back from Atlanta yesterday, a week ago now. And she said they're leaving me alone. So I really appreciate it. So, like I said, but there was no loopholes, there was no tricks, there was no seals broken, there was no, wrote a letter, and it's like at the bottom of the memo we said account paid in full. We didn't do any of that nonsense. We just basically asked them simple questions, like simple common law questions. Is there a man or woman who's going to claim that I owe this debt, that this debt is true? Is anybody going to come forth in an open court and swear to it? And I'll pay it. Just tell me I owe and I'll cover it. Very simple question, because if you walk out to 100% of people in the United States and you say to them, look, if somebody says you owe a debt, are you going to believe them or are you going to ask them, is it true? It's like, oh, no, if I don't know who this person is or I'm not sure, I'm going to ask them if it's true. Yeah, that makes sense to me. Right, so when you go in front of the jury, they're going to ask the same thing. You're going to say, look, all I asked the IRS, that's all I asked them to do. To put it in a form of writing, tender me the bill, sign it, and say that's the true debt. And I'll go to court, and my name is Susie Johnson, and I work for the IRS, and I'll swear that it's true. And as soon as she does, they say, lovely. And then if she's off by 1 penny, she bears full liability for claiming something that's not true, due, or owed. And she's going to find herself in awfully big trouble for committing perjury and for swearing against her brother that he owes it, that he's guilty of something that she knows he's not, or that she's not really sure. Right. She better 100% sure that it's down to the penny, because like I said, my mom works for the IRS, and she said, you know what, you can put 1,000 of us order this together, and we give you a tax return, and not one of us will match. We'll all be off by a penny or two, $1, $2, $100, a couple of $1,000 from each other. None of us will hit the same number. It's just like impossible. We'll never come up with the same number.
Right. So even if they interact with me using that name and I address my letter to that name, because for instance, like they'll send, like let's take IRS.
But the big thing is like
they'll say the sender is tax. They'll never put a name on it.
The big thing, dude, is like the same thing that happened to Dean in court. If you read his transcripts, the judge kept calling him Dean Clifford, and he kept responding to it. All Dean had to say was ridiculous, and Dean was like saying to the judge, "Well, you have no jurisdiction. You got no, no jurisdiction on me." And the judge was like, "Oh, you better believe I absolutely do. Every time I call your name, Clifford, you jump. I pull in your strings like a marionette. I pull in your strings like a puppet. When I say Dean Clifford, you jump. So obviously, you know that this is a legal proceeding. You know I'm a legal judge. Then you obviously must be in legal land, and I'm pulling your strings in legal land." Now, all Dean had to say is, which Dean Clifford do you wish? The legal person known as Dean Clifford or the man known as Dean Clifford, sir? How may I serve this court?
Right. Real simple.
He didn't do that. He just kept, every time the judge said, like I said, his transcripts are on his website. Read them. And the judge kept saying to him, look, dude, every time I call your name, you answer me. So what makes you think I don't have control over you?
Right. If
I kept saying peanut butter and jelly, obviously you wouldn't answer. But every time I say Dean Clifford, you jump like a banana.
Mm-hmm.
You come up and you start yelling at me. You start giving me the third degree. You keep going on and on with all your rhetoric. And it's like, dude, this court absolutely has control over you. Look what we're doing to you. We're making you jump like a banana. If I kept saying Susan Johnson, you'd be relaxed and calm. You wouldn't respond. You wouldn't answer. But obviously, you believe we exist.
Right.
All you have to say is what name? Dean Clifford, Dean Clifford the person, the legal person, or Dean Clifford the man? Which one do you want to appear in this court? And which one do you believe you have jurisdiction and control over? And it would have freaking ended a year ago for him. I told his brother that 100 times. Have your brother stop answering to this legal bullshit person name. He keeps telling himself. He's never going to get out.
Right.
But he thinks he's a master of attorneys, like legalese. And he's like, I got this all figured out. I got their code. I got their structure. I got their policies. I know exactly how to... No, it's ridiculous. You don't.
Yeah, that's not long it is.
But thank God Larry, Little Bill down in Texas, sent me that letter from some folks up in Ohio. And the judge said, even though you have, legal conclusions, and it seems like they're all proper, and it seems like you've been studying this a lot, we can't accept any of your legal conclusions because we don't see that you're registered and licensed in the state of Ohio to practice law. And that exact letter is on my website. So if nobody believes what I say, I keep telling people, the judge does not care less what you put into that court. They don't care how perfect your stuff is. They don't care. You're so far down on the food chain, they couldn't care less.
Right.
Because of two things for sure is one, is they know an illegal attorney, he's been practicing this stuff. He had to go to school for years to learn this stuff. So when he cites a case, when he makes legal conclusions, they know that if he makes a mistake a couple of times and he tricks the court or he's in like contempt of court, he commits perjury, he won't be able to practice anymore. They'll say, look, we don't got time to double-check and triple-check your citations and quotes. We're not going to do it. So every time you come to my court surfing that one, we ain't got the time you're going to lose. So don't waste your time. So like I said, as this lady, I mean, I'm sure she did all her citations and everything. Perfect. The only problem is the court says, you know what, you're not learned in citations or precedents or case law, and we're not going to go back and double-check to make sure you did it right. Because when you come to court, we take your word as gold. We're not going to double-check and back-check and make sure that all these citations and precedents of case law and rulings and codes you're relying on are up-to-date, are accurate, and they're the latest and the newest. We're not going to do it. So, like, you know what? Even though these all might be, they sound wonderful, but you know what? The Supreme Court might have came up with a new ruling yesterday and be in total opposition of what you're bringing before the court today. So you know what?
Exactly. Right.
Can't accept any of your stuff.
Yep.
I mean, it's simple how to handle court. It's not even funny.
Yeah, that's true.
God bless him, man. His transcripts are there. The videotapes are there. So you could actually watch how he did his court. Well, not his court. You know, it was his trial, but it was their court.
Oh, my goodness.
He was along for the ride as a defendant. They gave their court. You know, he couldn't fight back in that court because he's not the prosecutor. The only thing he could do is cover up and take a beating because he's a defendant. That's what defendants do in the prize fight. And when they're fighting in a boxing ring, what do? You defend yourself.
Right.
What do? You
defend yourself.
You block the other blows. You're not hitting back because as soon as you hit back, you're the prosecutor. You're the pursuer.
Mm-hmm.
You're the aggressor. The only thing you're doing is covering up, playing rope-a-dope on the ring, and you just hope they get tired of beating the crap out of you and eventually let you out of jail. Hopefully they figured you submitted enough. You took enough beating. You look crappy. You look like hell. You've been through jail for a couple of years. You lost a lot of weight, and, you know, hopefully we beat you into submission, and we'll let you go. You can mess with us again, we'll hold you up a little longer, beat you up again some more. Or become a man and just say, okay, what do you wish the Dean Clifford, the man, to appear? Do you wish the Dean Clifford, the legal person, to appear? Which one do you believe in?
They can never operate in a private capacity. Only a man can.
Right. No, because you call me out man to man. Only another man could call me out. You want to call me out? Call me out. I'll accept the challenge. I'll accept the duel. I'll accept the fight. I'll accept the battle. Man to man. You ain't going to bring a legal society. You ain't going to bring millions of legal attorneys after me. You know, man to man. You can't do that. You got to fight me one-on-one. We're going to do this man on man.
Yep.
And thank God this land is still a common law land where you can call out man to man. And saying, who's accusing me of doing wrong? Let them take the stand and let them swear. This habeas corpus been suspended? You know, if it hasn't, then I wish to have my accuser come forth into an open forum, and I wish my accuser to take the stand and read out to the world what I've done wrong to him or her. Not what I've done wrong to my neighbor, not what I've done wrong to society, what I've done wrong to him or her. That's habeas corpus. Habeas corpus has nothing to say about, oh, well, that means I get out of jail and I go home free, like he was thinking. That's not what it means. It means I got the right to meet my accuser in open court and have the plaintiff take the stand and swear that I've done something wrong to him or her personally. First-hand knowledge. Not to be afraid. Not to be in violation of the code. Okay.
Did you want to continue the conversation with him?
If somebody else wants to ask a question, I guess we'll do that real quick because I got to do laundry soon, man. I got to get ready to go to Missouri. I got no clean clothes, man. It's pretty funny. I've been working for like 2 weeks straight, man. I basically got clay on everything I own. That's decent. Pretty funny.
Do you have a washer and a dryer?
Nope. So I got to run into town. I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that around 3 o'clock in the morning, and then this man wants to leave. Thank God I've got a ride from somebody who wants to go see my show, so I'm going to jump in and hopefully sleep for 10, 12 hours while we're driving. I forgot all about the show, so they, you know, plane tickets, I'm sure. I'm doing like a seminar in Missouri.
Oh, okay.
In Joseph's, Missouri, and I forgot all about it because I was sick, and I was running around doing this, moving over to my folks' farm, and next thing I know, lady calls me up. I said, oh, my God, I've got to do a show in a couple of days, so I'm sure airline tickets probably would have been like $2-3 grand. So I said, oh, man, you know what? I'll just bum a ride from somebody who's coming from the East Coast and going to Missouri, and I found a guy who's going from the East Coast. That's Rhonda, right? No, Pennsylvania. He's up in Philly.
No, but I mean, aren't you going to do your show on behalf of Rhonda?
Yeah, Rhonda. She's in St. Joseph, Missouri.
Yeah, okay.
Oh,
yeah, she's been talking about it for weeks.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah,
So.
weeks and moving to
I didn't know you
weeks.
called it a show, though.
Well, yeah, it's kind of like a seminar show. I'm just going to go up there and perform.
Okay.
Give the people what they want. You know, I'm just going to hopefully have like a whiteboard there waiting for me, and I'll just point to the crowd and say, what do you guys want to talk about? I said, why talk about child support and custody? You guys want to talk about IRS? You want to talk about IRS? Spend 2 days talking about IRS. You want me to show?
Yeah, that's always a fun subject.
Well, just like with Rhonda. I said, you want me to show you what I did for Rhonda? You know, Rhonda had, she did the Winston Trot procedure. She got
She
behind
did?
Oh, yeah, she got like the $60,000 or whatever, 50, 60, whatever, and whatever amount it was. You know, everybody was writing everything off like crazy.
Mm.
And then obviously they come after you, you know, because you're an employee of the United States. That's kind of ridiculous and funny.
Mm.
But whose ever process that was, you know, that's ridiculous. So then, you know, you got to write letters to the IRS, and you got to, say, well, thank God. She had 3 different senators write to her. One said like 40,000, one said 50,000, one said 60,000. I was like, oh my God, this is sweet. We got absolute proof that they're committing fraud. They have no freaking clue. Somebody says I owe this, somebody says I owe that, somebody says I owe this. Oh my God, sweet, lovely. That happened to my sister years ago. She moved out of a home, and I told her, man, this is a ripoff. This contract is a scam. I said, you're leasing a house. I'm telling you. I walked around the house the day she moved in, and I said, you're going to owe between $12,000 and $18,000 the day you move out. She said, that's ridiculous. I said, I shit you not. I said, I'm reading the contract, and I was going around saying the windows got to be, the walls got to be repainted this much, $2,500 a wall, $300 for the windows. I mean, I was just walking around. And when she left, the house was spotless. And the lady who did the walkthrough, my sister said, it's almost Christmas. I need the money. Do you think you're going to give me the $1,500 deposit soon? And she's like, yeah, soon. And I said to the lady, well, if, say she owes, you find $10,000, $15,000 worth of damages, will you let her make payments over time? And my sister said, oh, stop being ridiculous. They're not going to do that to me. And she said, we'll let her make payments. And I said, so you do, I said, so like other women who have children, like my sister, just a single woman who has kids, and I'm sure you let them make payments all the time, too. She says, oh, yeah, all the time. We let, them make payments, too. We don't, go after them for the full amount. And my sister said, well, that's other women and children, but they would never do that to me. I said, yeah, right. You're a sucker. You're a woman. You don't read the freaking contract. You fell in love with a beautiful house, and you have no idea what you just signed. I told you, don't sign it until I get here, and you signed it anyway. So funny, on Christmas Eve, she pulls up in my driveway. Not in her driveway, sorry about that, with a kid, and I'm sitting in front of like the fireplace because it's Christmas Eve, and she's crying like a baby. She gets a letter, she says she owes $15,000. So what was funny is 15,000.00. That's how much she owed for damages. And I took the letter and I just rolled it up. I said, this is fraud and extortion. I threw it in the fireplace. Thank God she pulled it out. In my dictionary, I actually have the response that I gave them, the second letter I wrote to them. In the dictionary thing I wrote, so people could have an example of what's extortion and how to handle it. But then I said to my sister, look, enjoy Christmas. Let me write a quick letter. Look, I'll fire up my computer. I'll have 2 sentences. I'll mail it out Monday morning, December 26th. This is all going to go away in a week or 2. Trust me. And she's like, oh, I'm going to be broke. I can't pay this much money. I'm stressed out as it is. I said, stop crying. Enjoy Christmas. So the first letter was like, can you please give me an itemized statement of the bill so we could pay the bill, so we could, and move on with this matter like forthwith. Something simple like that, 2 sentences. So they came back with the actual itemized statement of the bill. It was $8,700, like $19.67. So I said, lovely, this is fraud, this is extortion, this is communicating threats, saying, if you don't pay us, we're going to take you to court with the $15,000. I said, yes, because actually in the Code of Virginia of 1950, it clearly says that extortion, if you threaten somebody with a legal procedure, that is also considered extortion. So you can't threaten people. It's like, I'm going to sue you. So you see that nonsense on TV all the time saying somebody's screaming, I'm going to sue you. Well, you know what? That's called extortion. It's just like a Gambino saying, you know what? I'm going to break your legs if you don't pay me $15,000. I'm going to take you to court. That's stressful. It's scary. It's, it hurts your status and your character in the public. So, to be considered a defendant, and then it goes like on your permanent record with credit agencies that you went into a bankruptcy court or an eviction court or whatever. You get recorded for you'll be known as the defendant, and believe me, it's going to hurt you, in the financial world as well. So anyway, I wrote a lovely letter back to them. That letter's really cool. That's the one I put in addition. I basically just said, we'll be more than glad to entertain your suit in any open form within the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I hope that you're willing to answer our suit as well, because we are going to not only believe that we believe you committed extortion and that you claimed a debt that was not true, but the Code of Virginia in 1950 clearly stipulates under the terms of extortion, under whatever the code was, 16.1301, that communicating a threat by intimidating somebody by a court procedure is extortion, and by and then whatever the other code was for a fraud, making a claim that was not true of a debt, or making a claim that somebody owes a debt that's not true. So I said, we'll be more than glad to entertain you in any court if you will accept our invitation to our court. So we never heard back from them ever again, and that was 2007, I think. Yeah, 2007. So she was like, wow, it really works. I said, yes, believe me, it really works. This stuff isn't rocket science.